Frindle by Andrew Clements. Chapter 12, Airwaves. Within a week after the article was published in the Westfield Gazette, the kids at junior high and the kids at the high school had stopped using the word pen and had started using the word Frindle. They loved it. Nick became sort of a hero for kids all over town, and he quickly learned that being a hero, even if you're only a local hero, isn't a free ride. It has a price. People noticed Nick when he walked into his dad's hardware store or when he stood in line at the penny pantry to buy a candy bar. He could feel it when someone organized him, and it made him shy and awkward. Kids at school started expecting him to be clever and funny at all times, and even for a kid as smart as Nick, that was asking a lot. Every teacher, the office secretary, the principal, even the school nurse and the custodian all seemed to be watching, always watching. His parents were great about everything. True, his mom had been upset when the article first came out, and so had his dad. Nick had said, "But I didn't do anything wrong, Mom, and neither did the lady from the newspaper," and his parents could see that he was right. The things in the article were true about the truth is the truth, and nothing could be done about it. Now, even though it made it uncomfortable to have the boy talked about all over town sincerely, Nick's mom and dad were pleased. After all, a brand new word is a pretty amazing thing. There, Nicholas was quite a fellow, no getting around it. Someone else in town through the brand new word was pretty amazing too. But Lawrence had lived all his life in Westfield, and when he was only 19 years old, he had saved enough money to make an investment. He looked around for good ideas and then bought the first Dairy Queen in the state. After a few years, he bought a McDonald's restaurant. That was almost 30 years ago, and these two restaurants have made him rich, one of the Westfield's leading cities. When Bud Lawrence saw the article about the new word, he had his lawyer file a preliminary trademark claim on the word Frindle. Within 4 days, he had set up a small company that was selling cheap plastic ballpoint pens, specially imprinted with the word Frindle. He sold 3,000 Frindles for the first week, and they sold so fast that stores all over Westfield couldn't keep them in stock. They just as quickly kids stopped asking for Frindles. The sales slowed down, and Bud Lawrence started thinking about other projects. A week later, it was Halloween. The leaves started falling, and it seemed like town was going to quiet down. And it would have if it hadn't been for Alice Lunderson. Alice lived in Beverly, a town 7 miles away from Westfield, and she worked part-time for the local CBS TV station in Carrington, a town for about 75,500 people. When there was an important area news, disasters like floods or tornadoes, or sometimes if she came across little stories that seemed cute or original, Alice would call the station news managers in Carrington. If it was a good story, or if it was a day when not much else was happening in the world, then the TV station would send out a van with a camera crew to shoot some videotape. Alice subscribed to the small town newspapers in the area to keep up with the local events. Most of them were published on Thursday, and they arrived at her house by Monday or Tuesday. Then it took her a day or so to look through them all. On Wednesday morning, she finally saw the article in the Westfield Gazette about the word war. She read it through twice and looked carefully at the class photography. She was sure that this story was a winner. The TV station manager in Carrington agreed with her. He called the CBS station in Boston because sometimes Boston picked up stories from the Carrington newsroom. The woman in Boston thought the story had some real zip to it, so she called the network news editor in New York. When the facts of the Westfield Gazette article got to New York, the staff there loved it. They looked over the schedule sheet for those weeks and decided it would be perfect closing story for the CBS Evening News for the next day. Thursday, orders flew back through the telephone line from New York to Boston to Carrington to Beverly. By Wednesday at noon, Alice had a go order to take the story all the way. It was her first piece to get onto the national news. 20 million viewers would see it. Alice Lunderson and her camera crew stood on Mrs. Granger's front porch Wednesday after school. Mrs. Granger was not impressed at all by the lights and the microphones. She looked right into the camera and said, "I have always said that the dictionary is the finest tool ever made for educating young minds, and I still say that children need to understand that there are rules about words and language, and that those rules have a history that makes sense, and to pretend that a perfectly good English word can be replaced by a silly made-up word just for the fun of it, well, it's not something I was ready to stand by and watch without a fight." "And have you lost a fight, Mrs. Granger?" asked the reporter. Mrs. Granger turned her eyes up to nearly full power as she looked into the camera, and with a pale smile she said, "It's not over yet." When Alice and the crew stood up at Nick's house, the Allen family were ready for them. Mom and Dad sat on the couch with Nick between them. Nick squinted into the lights. His mom had worked out with Nick what he could say and what he couldn't say. "You remember, young man," she had told him as she combed his hair, "these reporters are just looking for a quick story that will make some excitement. But you have to stay here and live in this town, so mind your P's and Q's." As they sat there in the couch, Mrs. Allen had her foot on top of Nick's under the coffee table, and if she pushed down, it meant that the reporters had just asked a question that she was going to answer for him. Mrs. Alice did not trust reporters. "So tell me, Nick, why did you make up this new word, Frindle?" asked Alice Lunderson. Nick gulped and said, "Well, my teacher, Mrs. Granger, said that all words in the dictionary were made up by people and that they mean what they mean because we say they do. So I thought it would be fun to make up a word and see if that was true." And were you surprised when Mrs. Granger got mad about this?" asked Alice with a smile. There was a push on Nick's foot, and his mother said, we never felt that Mrs. Granger got angry. When everybody started using the word Frindle, it just got to be a disruption, that's all. She's really a very fine teacher." "Yeah," said Nick. "I mean, I learned a lot about words, and without her, I wouldn't have. So what's next for you and the new word?" Alice was wrapping it up. She could see that Nick and her parents were not going to be pushed into saying anything controversial, so she just kept it light and happy. "Well," said Nick, "the funny thing is, even though I invented it, it's not my word anymore. Frindle belongs to everyone now, and I guess everyone will figure out what happens together." Alice also had a short chat with a worried-looking Mrs. Chatham and smiling Bud Lawrence, maker of the official Frindle. Then she shot her opening bit and her closing bit, and the camera crew drove back to Carrington to edit all the pieces and put them together to a 2-minute news story. The next night, when all the serious news about wars, oil prices, and world food supplies had been talked about on the CBS Evening News, the anchorman looked into the camera and smiled. He said, "It is believed by many that the word quiz was made up in 1791 by a Dublin theater manager named Daly. It had bet someone that he could invent a brand new word in the English language and chalked up the letters Q-U-I-Z. A to every wall and building in town. The next morning, there it was, and within a week, people all over Ireland were wondering what it could mean, and a new word had been created. Of course, it's the only word in English that was invented by one person for no particular reason. This until now, there is a new word, Frindle. And here's Alice Lunderson in Westfield, New Hampshire, with the story. Alex came on the screen with a short introduction. Then right there on TV, Mrs. Granger and Nick and Bud Lawrence and Nick's mom were talking to 20 million people about Frindles. One of those 20 million people was a producer from the Law Show with David Letterman. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of Frindle. Thank you for watching. Join us for part 2.